So what we're doing is making a monkey. It takes 2 socks to make 1 monkey. So one sock becomes the body, and the other sock becomes the arms, the mouth, the tail, and the ears. So the first thing we need to do is turn our sock, which is right side out, to be wrong side out. And you can see, because this is actually a knit, okay, you can see it looks different. So on the outside here I have knit. On the inside, or the wrong side, I have what we call the purl. So those of you who knit or have someone who knits at home would know what that might look like. So I'm going to reach my hand into the sock and simply pull it the other way around. Once I've done that, it's looking sort of flopsy. Well, I want it to be nice and lined up so that when I make my markings, my body doesn't start to look twisted like this. So I don't want it to be all twisted. I want it to be nice and straight. So I'm going to grab the edges using the corners of the heel to guide me. I'm going to use these little lines here also to make sure that they're nice and straight up and down to help guide me. And then I'm going to straighten out what's going to be the monkey's bum and the monkey's mouth. So I'm going to straighten out the top, okay? And this is going to be the body. Now, we're going to break the rules of sewing, and we are actually going to use a marker to mark this. If I use this marker and press really hard, what's going to happen is I run the risk of it soaking through to the right side of my fabric. So when I go to use this marker, I'm going to touch it just lightly. I'm not going to make a solid line, I'm just going to dab. What I'm making right now is the body. So the body, we don't do anything to the top. We simply put a line between what's going to become the legs. So I need to figure out where's the middle of this. There's different ways I could do that. I could fold it in half and just put my finger down and say, oh, okay, that looks like the halfway. If I was really picky, I could take a tape measure and measure across and divide by 2 and find my halfway point. I'm not so picky. I like to just fold it. These monkeys, part of their charm is that some of them are flopsy and a little bit sideways. We're okay with that. We're just going to do the best we can. So here it goes, very lightly, dotted line going down the center of the monkey. What I have just made right there is going to become my cutting line. I have to remember when I go to sew, my sewing line is actually going to be on either side of that cutting line. When I get to the bottom, it's going to curl around, and there's my foot. Then I'm going to go back up when I sew. I'm going to come down this side, and as I curl, that's the bottom of my other foot. Now I can work on my arms, mouth, tail, and ears. So the arms look exactly like the legs. So I'm going to measure my center point. I just fold it in half and I stick my finger right in what becomes the center, and it looks like this little knit row here is my center point. So I'm just going to follow that all the ways down. There again is my cut line. That means I'm going to sew on either side of that cut line. That's where my seam is going to be. And then I'm going to take the scissors to the line that's in the middle and split these. Now what's different between my arms and my legs is that eventually I'll cut those arms off so that I can attach them. So now I can measure the mouth. The mouth, I need to remember something we call seam allowance. So I need to make sure that when I go to cut my mouth out, there's going to be a little bit of gray showing on the edge, so that when it comes time to attach that to the body, I'm going to be able to tuck that in and attach it so it looks nice and finished. So when I go to measure and mark it right now, I'm going beyond the white and I'm actually marking on the gray. Okay, I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to do the same on this side. But then I have to remember that I'm not creating a tube, I'm actually cutting this into sort of a football. So I turn it on its side so that I can mark my little edge. I'm turning that on its side and marking that little edge. Okay, now it's time for my ears and my tail. Now, here's the halfway point on my upper part of my sock. If I make my tail big and fat like that, it's going to stick straight out from the back of the monkey and look kind of strange. It really looks nice when we make a narrower tail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this over and just use your own judgment. Remember, you get to be a little bit creative when you make these little monkeys. I come right into the white and I go off the end. When it gets into the white, you can see this edge is curling. So I kind of like this to curl so that it matches that other side. Now I can measure my ears. So I like my ears to be a fair size. I think that size looks nice. Some of us like to put a top stitch, and this one has a top stitch in progress. Other people like to put a little pucker and make a little bit smaller ears. Okay, so those options you will make once you go to cut, but because you're at the design and planning, you have to think, well, how big do I want my ears? So if I measure this size, okay, that's about what I'm going to get. Lots of people make their ears a bit too small, and then they have a hard time with them after. So I'm just very lightly sketching out my ear. If I really want this to be the same size as the other one, I could fold that over and gauge my distance. And then I could go down here and say, oh, okay, that's about the same. But we're not that fussy again. That's kind of the charm of the sock monkey. Okay, the last thing I need to mark is a notch right here. This is going to remind me that when I go to sew this, because right here it's inside out, it's wrong side out. If I sew that shut, I can't turn it so that it's right side out. So when I go to sew, now I know that I can start at this end, sew up, over and around, and back stitch here, so I have a little hole to turn my ear right side out. And that is the layout for the monkey.